Most people go through life reacting. Something happens, they flare up, someone says something, they snap, they get an email, they panic, they hear a criticism, they shut down, and here's the truth: reacting is easy. It takes no discipline, no self-control, no thought. It's automatic, it's emotional, but responding, that's where the real growth begins. Responding requires you to pause. It requires awareness. It asks you to step outside the moment, just long enough to choose a better direction. You see, a reaction is about survival, but a response is about strategy. Reactions are based on habit. Responses are based on values. Reactions escalate problems. Responses solve them. And in life, you don't rise to your emotions. You rise to your level of preparation. So the question is, are you prepared to lead yourself? Are you willing to slow down long enough to take the emotional charge out of a moment? That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Don't let every trigger pull you into chaos. Don't let every storm inside someone else become your weather. Learn to listen before you reply. Learn to breathe before you speak. Learn to observe before you judge. When you respond, you take back your power. You're no longer driven by the moment. You're directing the moment. And here's the beauty. The more you practice responding, the more you upgrade your thinking. You become less reactive and more intentional. You build patience, you develop clarity, you grow confidence. Responding allows you to show up as the best version of yourself, even when life isn't being kind. So next time you're about to react, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what's the best move I can make here? Not the easiest, not the loudest, not the quickest. The best. Because when you learn to respond, you're no longer just surviving life. You're shaping it. That's the real shift. Reactions are automatic. They happen in the heat of the moment, without asking for your permission. They're fast, raw, and often fueled by emotion. They come from instinct, not insight. They are based on habit, not reflection. Reacting is easy, because it doesn't ask anything from you. You don't have to pause. You don't have to think. You don't have to choose. You just feel something and act on it. But responding is different. Responding is intentional. It's thoughtful. It's deliberate. It means you didn't just allow the moment to control you. You chose how to meet it. When you react, the situation owns you. When you respond, you own the situation. Reacting can turn small misunderstandings into big arguments. Responding can turn tension into understanding. Reacting often adds fuel to the fire. Responding often puts the fire out. Reacting is emotional reflex. Responding is emotional intelligence, and here's the difference. It's just a few seconds, just a pause, just a breath, but that pause changes everything. It creates space. It creates clarity. It creates choice. You are not your emotions. You have emotions, and that means you can choose what to do with them. A reaction is a message from your past old habits, old pain, old fears. A response is a message from your present, who you are right now, and who you're becoming. You see, life will always bring pressure. Life will always test your patience. But pressure doesn't shape you. Your response to pressure does. Anyone can react. It takes no training, no maturity, no discipline. But to respond, that takes strength, that takes awareness, that takes growth. Reaction is loud. Response is calm. Reaction is blind. Response is clear. Reaction creates regret. Response creates results. So every time you're triggered, you face a choice. Will you react out of habit or respond with purpose? You don't rise to the emotion. You rise to your preparation. And preparation begins with a mindset that says, I am not here to be controlled by chaos. I am here to lead myself, because you can't control everything that happens around you, but you can always control how you respond to it. And that control, those small, intentional responses, that's where real power lives. That's where peace grows. That's where relationships improve. That's where your life shifts, not by reacting to every storm, but by responding with wisdom, with patience, and with strength. Reacting is driven by emotion. It's immediate, raw, and unfiltered. It's what happens when you let feelings take the wheel. Anger speaks. Frustration lashes out, fear runs away, and regret shows up later, wondering why you didn't pause. Emotions are powerful. They're part of being human, but they were never meant to lead you. They're signals, not instructions. When you react from emotion, you surrender your control. You let the moment decide for you, and often that leads to saying things you didn't mean, doing things you wish you could undo, hurting people you didn't want to hurt. But responding, that's different. Responding is guided by values. It's led by principle, not pressure. It's driven by who you are, not just how you feel. Values are steady, emotions are not. Emotions can shift by the hour. But your values, they're your compass, even when the storm is loud. When you react, the world pulls you in every direction. When you respond, your values pull you back to center. Maybe your value is respect. Then you choose your words with care, even when you're angry. Maybe your value is patience. Then you hold space, even when you want to rush. Maybe your value is growth. Then you use the moment to rise, not collapse. Reacting asks, what do I feel right now? Responding asks, what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? That question changes everything, because it lifts you out of emotion and places you into intention. It puts the power back in your hands. Reacting is fast, but often destructive. Responding is slower, but always stronger. Emotions fluctuate. You can feel joy in the morning and disappointment by lunch. Excitement today, doubt tomorrow. That's normal, that's human, but your values, they're not based on mood. They're based on meaning. They're the foundation beneath your decisions. They're the ground you walk on, no matter the weather above. The more you choose to respond with values, the more consistent your life becomes. You stop being a prisoner to every feeling. You stop bouncing between highs and lows. You begin to build character. You begin to build trust in yourself and from others. Because people may forget what you said, but they remember how you showed up, not just in good times, but in hard ones. And every response, every moment you choose your values over your emotions, you grow. You become someone others can count on. You become someone you can count on. So when emotions rise, remember this: you don't have to follow them. You can feel them, respect them, even learn from them. But you can still lead with your values, because the goal is not to feel nothing. The goal is to feel everything, and still choose wisely. Respond with patience. Respond with clarity. Respond with character. And let your values lead you where emotions never could. A pause can save you, not just from saying the wrong thing, but from becoming the wrong version of yourself. In the heat of the moment, when emotions are high and thoughts are racing, a pause is your power. It's your space, it's your breath, it's your chance to choose what happens next. We live in a world that rewards speed, quick replies, instant reactions, fast decisions, but speed without thought is dangerous. It's how relationships get damaged. It's how trust gets broken. It's how regret finds its way in. Slowing down before you respond isn't weakness. It's strength in motion. It's the sign of someone who's not controlled by chaos. Someone who's learned to lead themselves first. Because when you pause, you give clarity a chance to catch up. You give logic room to breathe. You let your values step in before your ego takes over. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is wait a few seconds. Let the rush pass. Let the storm calm. Let your mind return. You don't have to reply immediately. You don't have to defend instantly. You don't have to prove your point in the moment. You just have to stay in control of yourself. That posits where emotional maturity lives. It's where you remember what matters most. It's where you stop reacting from pain and start responding from purpose. People often say things like, "I didn't mean to say that," or "I wasn't thinking." That's the cost of skipping the pause. That's what happens when we move too fast. And it's not just what you say, it's what you do. That split-second reaction can turn a bad moment into a worse one. But when you take a moment, when you breathe, when you pause, you create a gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap lies freedom, freedom to think, freedom to choose, freedom to stay aligned with who you want to be. A pause gives you the advantage. It allows self-control to enter the room. It reminds you that not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment deserves a comeback. Not every battle is yours to fight. Clarity lives in silence. Peace lives in restraint. Wisdom lives in the pause. If someone insults you, pause. If a situation feels unfair, pause. If your temper is rising, pause. Because what you say next can either build a bridge or burn one. And what you do next can either reflect your values or betray them. You don't have to act on every impulse. You don't have to speak every thought. You don't have to be quick. You have to be wise. And wisdom comes from stillness, not reacting to life, but responding with intention. So next time you feel the tension building, stop, take a breath, step back, and remember that pause is not a delay, it's a decision, it's a moment of power, and that moment might just save your peace, your progress, and your future. Reactions escalate problems. They take a spark and turn it into a wildfire. They turn misunderstandings into arguments. They magnify tension. They intensify conflict. They make a small situation feel bigger than it ever needed to be. When you react emotionally, you often add fuel to the fire. You respond from impulse, not insight, from anger, not awareness, from pride, not perspective. And when that happens, things don't calm down. They explode. A raised voice triggers another. A harsh word invites one back. A defensive tone creates distance. It's a chain reaction, and once it starts, it's hard to stop. One person's reaction feeds another's. And before long, the issue isn't even the issue anymore. Now it's about tone. Now it's about respect. Now it's about who's right and who won't back down. But responses do something different. They slow things down. They soften the moment. They pull people out of the storm and back into reason. A response doesn't ignore the problem. It simply chooses not to make it worse. It seeks understanding, not victory. Resolution, not revenge. When you respond, you shift the energy in the room. You bring calm into chaos. You bring clarity into confusion. And more often than not, people mirror the tone you set. A calm tone invites calm. A respectful approach invites respect. A steady presence creates safety. Emotional reactions often come from a need to be heard, to be right, or to protect yourself. But a response comes from a place of strength, not weakness. It says, "I'm not letting this moment decide who I am." It says, "I value the outcome more than I value the outburst." The truth is, most conflict doesn't start big, it starts small. A word taken the wrong way. A moment of stress, a misunderstanding that snowballs. Reactions keep the snowball rolling. Responses slow it down. You can't always stop problems from arising, but how you handle them determines whether they grow or dissolve. It's not just about what you say, it's how you say it. Tone, timing, delivery, all of it matters. And when you respond instead of react, you show that you're not just emotionally aware, you're emotionally in control. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to not become part of it, and reactions make you part of the problem. Responses position you as part of the solution. A reaction is about being right in the moment. A response is about being wise in the long run. You may feel like reacting gives you power, but it doesn't. It gives your power a weight, emotion, to ego, to chaos. Real power is found in restraint, in knowing when to speak and how. In knowing when to step back and breathe. So next time something stirs you up, before you react, pause before you speak, think before you judge, listen, choose the response that leads to peace, not pressure, to clarity, not conflict, because the goal isn't to win the moment. The goal is to protect the bigger picture. Responding puts you back in control. It returns your power to you. It reminds you that no matter what happens around you, you still have a choice. You can choose how to act. You can choose how to speak. You can choose how to carry yourself in the face of pressure. When you react, you surrender that control. You hand it over to your emotions, to the situation, to someone else's behavior. You become a passenger in your own experience, tossed around by whatever the moment brings. But when you respond, you take the wheel. You stop being ruled by circumstances, and you start shaping outcomes. You're not just surviving the moment, you're influencing it. You're deciding what comes next, instead of letting chaos choose for you. Responding means you're leading yourself, not following your feelings. It means you've stopped giving your peace away for free. You're not owned by someone else's words, or moods, or energy. You're grounded, rooted, present. The world doesn't slow down. Life keeps coming. But you don't have to match the pace of everything that shakes you. You can slow yourself down. You can breathe. You can choose to stay steady while everything else spins. Control doesn't mean controlling the situation. It means controlling how you meet it. It means remembering that your response carries more power than the event itself. You may not control what someone says. You may not control how someone treats you. You may not control the economy, the traffic, or the outcome of every conversation, but you do control how you show up, and that makes all the difference, because how you show up determines where things go. It determines whether things spiral or settle, whether you build bridges or walls, whether you stay aligned or lose yourself in the moment. When you respond with intention, you change the direction of your life. You stop operating from impulse and start living with integrity. You stop repeating old patterns and start creating new standards. People around you notice it. They trust you more. They feel safer with you. Because they can see you're not reactive, you're responsive. You're not easily shaken. You're not easily baited. You don't fall apart under pressure. And more than anything, you begin to trust yourself. You realize that you're not at the mercy of every storm. You're not a victim of every trigger. You can navigate hard moments with calm. You can handle stress with clarity. You can turn tension into resolution. You start responding to life with the kind of energy that shapes better results, better conversations, better decisions, better habits. Responding isn't about being passive, it's about being powerful. It's about choosing strength over impulse, clarity over chaos, wisdom over noise, and every time you choose to respond instead of react, you reinforce a deeper truth that you are capable of leading yourself. That your life doesn't have to be controlled by outside forces, that you have the ability to pause, to think, and to move with purpose. And from that place, everything changes. You begin to live by design, not default. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. Practice builds emotional discipline. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens one choice at a time, one pause at a time, one intentional response at a time. Just like training a muscle, it takes repetition. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. The first time you pause instead of react, it feels hard, unnatural, even uncomfortable, but that's how growth begins, through resistance. And the more you practice, the more familiar it becomes. You begin to catch yourself quicker. You start recognizing the warning signs. You feel the tension rise, and instead of giving in, you breathe. You step back, you respond with wisdom, not emotion. Emotional discipline is not about shutting down your feelings. It's about learning to guide them, not be guided by them, to use them, not be used by them. It's the ability to stay steady, even when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. That steadiness comes from practice, from showing up in small moments with awareness, from choosing presence over panic, from asking yourself what matters most right now. And every time you make that choice, you build leadership. You prove to yourself that you're in charge, not your anger, not your fear, not your stress. Leadership means you don't wait for the world to calm down to feel calm. You bring calm into the world by how you carry yourself. It means you don't wait for people to treat you right to act right. You act from your values, not their behavior. The more you practice, the more automatic your discipline becomes. What once took effort now becomes instinct. What once triggered you no longer shakes you. Because you've trained for this, you've built the muscle, you don't need perfect conditions to stay grounded. You've learned to anchor yourself. You've practiced stillness in the storm. You've practiced patience in pressure. You've practiced clarity when things are unclear. Emotional discipline gives you freedom, freedom from regret, freedom from overreactions, freedom from constantly cleaning up the mess of your past reactions. And it starts small, with one breath before speaking, with 1 second of thought before replying, with one shift in mindset, from reaction to response. These small moments stack up. They create new patterns. They build a stronger version of you, one who is less reactive, more intentional, less anxious, more grounded, less controlled by emotion, more led by principle. When you build emotional discipline, you carry yourself differently. People notice it. They feel safer around you. They trust your presence because you're not easily rattled. You don't explode. You don't crumble. You handle pressure with grace. You face challenges with composure. You lead yourself well, and that's where all other leadership begins. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. Every practice rep counts. Every choice to respond with clarity builds confidence. And over time, you realize this discipline has become part of who you are. It's not something you force. It's something you live, and it gives you the strength to show up with integrity, no matter the situation. Leadership starts with self-regulation. Before you can guide others, you have to guide yourself. Before you can influence the room, you have to master your own presence. Because no one truly follows someone who is constantly losing control. No one trusts a leader who can't stay composed under pressure. You can have the title, you can have the position, but leadership isn't about what's printed on your business card. It's about how you carry yourself in the tough moments. Self-regulation means you don't let your emotions run the show. You don't snap every time you're stressed. You don't shut down every time things don't go your way. You learn to pause. You learn to assess. You learn to respond with strength instead of react from weakness. That kind of control doesn't come from ego. It comes from discipline. It comes from humility. It comes from a decision, daily, to show up with intention instead of instinct. People are always watching, not to judge, but to learn. And what they learn from you is determined by how well you manage yourself, your tone, your attitude, your reactions. A leader who can't lead themselves becomes a liability. They create confusion instead of clarity, chaos instead of order, tension instead of trust. But a leader who is rooted in self-regulation brings calm to the chaos. They make people feel safe. They set the tone without raising their voice. They correct without shaming. They listen without interrupting. That's the kind of leadership that lasts. That's the kind of leadership people want to follow. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. You can't give what you haven't cultivated. If you haven't built patience, you can't extend it to others. If you haven't built emotional control, you'll spill your stress onto the people around you. If you haven't learned how to pause, your reactions will become someone else's burden. Real leadership begins behind closed doors. It begins in the mirror. It begins with the small moments when no one is watching. How you treat the people who can't do anything for you. How you carry yourself when things go wrong. How you bounce back after a failure. Self-regulation is not about suppressing emotions. It's about channeling them. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about choosing how to act, even when everything isn't. And here's the truth. People don't expect you to be perfect. They just need you to be stable, consistent, grounded, someone who doesn't lose themselves every time the pressure rises. When you lead yourself wisely, you set an example. You show others what strength looks like. Not loud, not flashy, but focused. Not driven by ego, but anchored in purpose. You can't lead others well until you can lead yourself with clarity and character. Because leadership is not about control, it's about influence. And the most powerful influence begins with personal responsibility. So work on mastering your mindset. Work on regulating your emotions. Work on becoming someone who others can count on, even when everything feels uncertain. That's where leadership really begins, not in what you say, but in how you live. Every response reflects your mindset. It's not just what you say, it's what it says about you. Because how you respond in any situation reveals your thinking, your beliefs, your emotional habits, your inner standards. You might not control what happens to you, but you do control how you interpret it. And that interpretation becomes your response. That response becomes your pattern. And over time, those patterns shape your identity. When you respond with patience, you're not just keeping peace, you're showing growth. When you respond with grace, you're not just being kind, you're choosing strength. When you respond with understanding, you're not being weak, you're being wise. How you respond is a mirror of your maturity, not the moment. Because the moment might be messy, it might be unfair, it might be filled with emotion, misunderstanding, or pressure, but none of that has to determine how you show up. You get to choose whether your response rises to your values or sinks to your emotions. You get to decide if your reaction adds to the chaos or brings back control. You get to ask yourself, am I reacting to the moment or responding from my mindset? Your mindset is the filter through which you see the world. It determines what you focus on. It shapes your expectations. It influences how quickly you're triggered and how deeply you think. And when your mindset is centered, your responses are too. When your mindset is focused on growth, your responses reflect maturity, even in discomfort, even in conflict, even in uncertainty. Every conversation is a chance to reflect who you are, not who you were yesterday, but who you are becoming. And every response is a signal, both to others and to yourself, of what you stand for. Responding with blame shows avoidance. Responding with silence shows retreat. Responding with ego shows insecurity. But responding with clarity, with calm, with strength, that shows development. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about being honest with yourself, about asking, what kind of mindset do I want to live from? Reactive or reflective? Defensive or disciplined? Emotional or intentional? When you work on your mindset, your responses begin to change. You no longer react to criticism with anger. You look for truth. You no longer take everything personally. You start taking responsibility. You no longer run from challenge. You meet it with clarity. And that's when the shift happens. That's when you stop being driven by the moment and start leading it. You stop being surprised by your reactions and start being proud of your responses, because you're no longer operating from old programming. You're living from new awareness. You're responding from a higher standard, not because life is easier, but because you've chosen better tools. Every response is a reflection. And if you want to change what others see, start by changing what you believe. Shift your mindset. Strengthen your values. Create a response pattern that reflects who you are at your best, not just how you feel at your worst. That's the work. That's the real measure of maturity. Not reacting to the world, but rising above it, one wise response at a time. Responding creates better relationships, not just by what you say, but by how you choose to show up. It's not about having the perfect words. It's about creating space where understanding can grow. When you respond, you slow things down. You remove the tension. You remove the heat. You bring in clarity where confusion once lived. When you react, you interrupt. You assume. You jump to defend or attack. But when you respond, you listen first. You let the other person be heard. And that alone can change everything. Because at the heart of every strong relationship is trust. And trust is built when people feel seen, when they feel heard, when they feel safe enough to speak honestly, without being met by instant judgment or sharp reactions. People trust those who stay calm in tough moments. They respect those who take time to understand before they reply, because it shows emotional strength. It shows maturity. It shows care. When you listen more and react less, people begin to lean in. They open up. They drop their defenses because you've created a safe environment, not just with your words, but with your presence. Reacting can damage connection. It can make people feel small. It can turn a simple disagreement into deep resentment. Because no one wants to feel dismissed. No one wants to feel like they have to fight just to be heard. But a thoughtful response builds bridges. Even in disagreement, it keeps the connection intact. Even in conflict, it allows for resolution instead of separation. You don't have to agree with someone to respond with respect. You don't have to feel the same emotions to show empathy. You just have to be willing to listen, to reflect, and to respond with intention. Healthy communication isn't about speaking louder. It's about listening deeper. It's about hearing what's not being said. It's about creating room for others to be honest without fear of reaction. When you respond well, you teach others how to respond to you. You model emotional discipline. You model maturity. You become someone others can come to not just in good times, but especially in difficult ones. And that's how trust grows. That's how loyalty is built. Not through perfection, but through presence. Not through performance, but through consistency. People won't always remember your advice, but they will remember how you made them feel. They will remember if you listened. They will remember if you stayed calm. They will remember if you gave them space to speak, space to be real. Relationships don't fall apart overnight. They crack through repeated reactions, raised voices, dismissive responses, moments where someone chose to react instead of listen. But they heal through small shifts, a softer tone, a longer pause, a better response. When you respond instead of react, you give the relationship a chance to grow. You give the other person a reason to trust you. You give yourself the opportunity to build, not break. So if you want better relationships, start by being a better responder. Not perfect, just present. Not always right, but always respectful. Not controlled by emotion, but guided by wisdom. Because how you respond doesn't just define you. It defines the connection, and great connections are built one calm response at a time. The power to respond is your greatest tool for growth. It's the space between what happens to you and what you decide to do next. It's the space where you take ownership of your life. It's the space where growth begins, because life won't always be kind. It won't always be fair. You will face disappointment. You will face loss. You will face challenge, criticism, and unexpected change. But none of that has the final word. What matters most is how you respond. How you carry yourself in the face of pressure. How you move forward after being knocked down. How you choose to rise when things fall apart. It's not what happens to you. It's how you choose to handle it that defines you. That's where your strength shows up. That's where your character is revealed. Not in comfort, but in challenge. Not in ease, but in adversity. You may not control what the world brings your way, but you control your attitude. You control your effort. You control your voice, your focus, your perspective, and that control is where your power lies. Responding isn't always about having the right answer. Sometimes it's simply choosing not to break, choosing not to blame, choosing to take the next small, strong step forward. When things go wrong, you have a choice. Stay in the setback or respond with growth. When people let you down, you have a choice. React with resentment or respond with wisdom. When life feels heavy, you have a choice. Collapse under it or respond with courage. Growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from resistance, from deciding again and again to respond with intention instead of emotion, to rise instead of retreat, to evolve instead of repeat. And each time you do, you get stronger, more focused, more centered, more capable of leading your life instead of being led by it. Every response is a seed that grows into confidence, into discipline, into wisdom, and over time, those seeds become your foundation. A life built not on what happened, but on how you responded. The most powerful people aren't those with perfect lives. They're the ones who kept choosing how to respond when life was far from perfect. They didn't let the pain shape them. They shaped themselves through the pain. They didn't let failure define them. They used it to refine their mindset. They didn't wait for things to get easy. They responded with strength until they did. You don't need to control everything around you. You just need to control how you meet it. That's where your peace is. That's where your confidence lives. Not in having a smooth path, but in having a strong response. So when the day gets hard, respond with resilience. When people are unkind, respond with grace. When your plans fall apart, respond with vision. When fear shows up, respond with action, because how you respond is who you become. And the more you respond with purpose, the more growth becomes your lifestyle, not just your goal. That's the power you hold every day. Not in what happens, but in what you choose to do with it. And that choice, that response, is how you grow beyond every limitation and into your potential. So remember this, every moment gives you a choice. You can react out of habit or respond out of wisdom. You can let life push you around, or you can lead yourself through it. Your growth, your peace, your future, they're not shaped by the noise around you, but by the strength within you. So take the pause, choose the response, and keep becoming the kind of person who doesn't just survive the moment, but rises above it. That's where real power lives. That's where transformation begins.